be talking to all the political parties, even those that are outside of the GNU. Joining me now is the Chief Whip of the ACDP, Mr. Steve Swart. Thank you so much for making time. Firstly, as the ACDP, what's your expectation from this mini budget?
Well, we've got high expectations, and we know the minister is faced with severe fiscal and financial constraints, given February's budget. However, things have changed dramatically since then. We now have a government of national unity with new ministers, with new initiatives, and we are really trusting that this will herald a new dawn for South Africa when it comes to our fiscal space, when it comes to the public finances. We must stabilize our public finances, but the only way of doing that is to stimulate economic growth. What we are seeing that are green shoots is the fact that thankfully we haven't had load shedding for more than 200 days. The logistics crisis is also being addressed, as is the water crisis. So if we can address those issues and stimulate economic growth, which will result in job creation and revenue collection being increased, then we can balance the books. So we are not expecting a lot of surprises today, but we are expecting a positive message going forward for the next 3 years. As we know, the details will be set out in February's budget vote, but already we are seeing certain positive elements, such as we see the currency is strengthening. We saw the Johannesburg Stock Exchange reaching record levels on Monday. That shows a positive investor sentiment towards South Africa. We also see interest rates have dropped, the inflation rate has dropped, so there are very positive developments. And of course, the minister will also be pleased that some of the revenue from those people that have dipped into their retirement savings will also increase revenue collection. From the ACDP's perspective, as we've always said, there's a lot of tax that can be collected. There's almost 300 billion rand. If we collect that additional 10% of that, that's an additional 30 billion rand that can go towards balancing the books, as you indicated. And of course, previous ministers have thanked the ACDP for our emphasis on saying give the law enforcement agencies more money, firstly to fight crime, but secondly to collect those tens of billions of rands that were stolen through state capture and corruption. We need additional funding in the medium term for your SIU, for your asset forfeiture unit, for the MPA to fight crime and corruption, fight extortion, but also collect those tens of billions of rands that have been stolen and are sitting in overseas bank accounts. If we
so you'd expect him to give additional allocations towards SABC, because we've got a growing crime problem. Recently, we've seen some mass shootings, and just my colleague just a short while ago reporting about 5 kids, teens that were raped, and a traditional healer that was also murdered. Do you expect him to make announcements of additional allocations?
Absolutely, for the medium term. That is normally what the policy sets out, and the details are given then in February for the specific budget year. But it is critical. It is the central role of government to protect its citizens. And as far as we are concerned, our government is failing in that regard, and far more needs to be done, not only to give the additional resources, but ensure that our police and our detectives are properly trained, that our courts are properly equipped, that people are prosecuted and face the full force of the law and sentenced to long terms of imprisonment for these horrendous crimes, extortion, murders, rapes. We've got to do far more in that regard, and that's where we as the ACDP, whilst we are not in the government of national unity, will play a constructive centrist role in holding government to account to ensure that these steps are implemented so that our citizens feel safe in their communities.
The issue of the cost of living rising, I'm sure maybe you might have some ideas for the finance minister.
No, absolutely. First of all, we know that our households, our individuals are really struggling with increased cost of living. What we've said in the past is let's relook at the fuel cost, the whole taxation in the fuel. And yes, we are grateful that the fuel price has reduced slightly due to the improvement in our currency, but there's far more that can be done to relieve our households, and particularly because when your fuel price is high with all the taxes, then it translates into additional costs of transport and food. That must be addressed. Secondly, of course, we would like to see the Reserve Bank drop the interest rate, the repo rate, far quicker, because that then relieves pressure on those households that have mortgage bonds, that have car loans, and that is very important as well. That will help to relieve pressure. And then, of course, we've got the social relief of distress grant that has been extended, and we believe that is an important aspect because that does relieve poverty in a little degree. But at the end of the day, we've got something like more than 25 million people on social grants, very grants. That is necessary in the short term, but in the long term, we've got to stimulate economic growth so that we can have job creation, because so that those people can be employed and maintain themselves, as opposed to relying on the state as a short-term solution.
Let you go, Steve. You must be pleased with the progress made in relation to the grey listing.
Yes, indeed, and we were deeply concerned why we were grey listed in the first place. However, we see progress in that regard. We see various laws that have been changed to address the shortcomings that were highlighted. And of course, we are starting to see more prosecutions on money launderings and corruption, and that is another requirement. So we are hopeful that we'll be removed from that grey list in a short term, because that will translate into strengthening our financial systems and our financial institutions. So we are looking for a positive message today from the Minister in the medium term that will, because we believe our nation needs hope at this stage, but we also need action to improve the situation for the people on the ground.
Thank you so much. Steve Swart is the Chief Whip of the African Christian Democratic Party, of course giving us unpacking what they expect from the Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, when he delivers his medium-term budget policy statement